Johnny is the offspring of Johnny Sr. This is now Johnny the fourth, right?
Mhm.
And there is something to be said that you only know what you know.
Yeah.
And then by the time you learn something different, you're so indoctrinated with what you knew
Yeah.
that it's hard to change, right? And so we don't see in the big picture, we don't see a lot of new offenders. We
Mm.
see families,
Wow.
generations,
Wow.
generations.
Wow.
Um, and it's so repetitive that we know them by name, right? It's so repetitive and the genes are so strong, even the physical genes are so strong that when you come in, I knew whose son you was because you look just like them,
Wow.
Wow.
right? And so, but are those then the argument with the institutional racism is, are these barriers put in place from generation to generation to generation where no one can overcome them? But then you got my story and your story, and you're like, no, I know people can overcome them because I did.
Mhm.
I did. You just have to have a change of your mind.
Well, welcome, soulmates. It's good to see you all. It's been a few weeks, but we're glad to be back here. I'm Chill from the Soul of a Man podcast, and I'm here with my wonder twin, my brother, DB. How you doing, man?
You know what? I've recovered from G-Ho like a real G. Feeling much better and glad to be here.
Takes a little longer at this age, doesn't it?
You know, man, I got everybody in
Listen,
my house sick, so it takes a little longer, and germs seem to spread just a bit faster. So, hey,
Well,
we're
I,
back though.
I came out of this one and said, moving forward, I'm going to G-Ho like an official 60-year-old. So it's going to be a different look for me next year.
I'm
and
with you.
guys, I said the same thing. At 55, you stop letting Jay-Z fool you. You were not the new 30.
Oh,
I was sitting up on the bench on Monday, like, OMG. This is not right.
Well,
and then
well,
I decided I was going to go see Usher on Wednesday, so I had to drive from Raleigh to Charlotte. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, not feeling well, and it's been crazy. I'm not a
yeah,
Yeah.
kid anymore.
no doubt. No doubt. Well, we're excited. We're real excited about tonight. You can see we're already talking and laughing, and we've got a special guest with us tonight, Superior Court Judge Lora Cubbage. And we're excited about it. I've had the pleasure of meeting Lora as we have come together on the board of visitors at the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University. And the last meeting we had a chance to chop it up a little bit, sitting beside each
Yes.
other. And I said, "Wow, you're really down to earth." And she just started laughing and said, "Look, I'm the queen of code switching. So yeah, I do what I have to do on the bench, and when I get off the bench, I'm just Laura." But D, I'm in the room, and all of us in the room. And here this vision comes in head to toe in Christian Dior, just looking like she stepped off a cloud. So we are excited to have our sister with us tonight. Let me give you a little background. Aside from her being beautiful and fly, um, let me give you a little background. In 2018, Governor Roy Cooper appointed District Court Judge Lora Cubbage as Superior Court Judge in Judicial District 18, serving Guilford County, North Carolina. Cubbage filled the vacancy of Judge Patrice Hennett, who had retired on August 31st of 2018. Judge Cubbage has held multiple legal roles, including District Court Judge for Guilford County, Assistant Attorney General for the North Carolina Department of Justice, and Assistant District Attorney for Guilford County. Judge Cubbage has also served in the North Carolina Bar Association, the Greensboro Bar Association, the North Carolina Association for Black Lawyers, and the Junior League of Greensboro. She holds her Juris Doctorate from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Law and her Bachelor of Arts degree from the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University. We are glad to have you here tonight because you have got an interesting story that we're going to get into, but we also want to know your family dynamic. I know there's a bunch of sisters, there's a twin, and we want to hear where you're from and your own immediate family. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a second.
Okay, so where do you want me to start? Background.
Let's start with growing up in Shenandoah, Virginia.
I grew up in Shenandoah, Virginia. We were one of two Black families in the town. The other Black family was my cousins on my dad's side. So at any given point, me and my four sisters were the only Black kids in the school. I am a twin, a daughter of five. It's five girls. I'm a twin, and my twin Lisa, that's how I ended up in North Carolina, because following behind her.
Okay.
But when I grew up, we're from a very small country town. College was never an emphasis. It was grow up, get married, have some kids, live happily ever after, right? And
Right.
so I believed in that life, right? That's what I saw. Everyone seemed to be happy, and I believed in that life. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what I did. I grew up. I kind of did it a little reverse. I had a baby, got married, got annulled. And then I'm like, oh crap. Now that I'm here as a single mom, what next, right? College was still never an emphasis in Shenandoah. I'm sure plenty of people went to college, but in the Black community, my family on either side, I'm a first generation college student. It was just never emphasized. It was always grow up, get a job, get married.
Yeah.
But my twin was dating someone that was in the National Guard, and they did their weekends here in Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
And so they fell in love with Greensboro. So she ended up moving to Greensboro with him. I'm having twin separation anxiety. I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do? Right. And, I'm married, think that's going to help the father of my child. Then I end up getting that annulled because that wasn't the right thing to do. And then I'm like, well, I just got to be where Lisa is. And so that's how I ended up in North Carolina.
Wow.
And so I come to North Carolina, and the first guy I date is a barber. So we're trying to figure out life for me. What am I going to do in North Carolina? Now, remember, I didn't have an education. So this is a college town, Greensboro. So everybody here has an education. Well, he cuts hair, and he's like, well, not a lot of women cut hair. Okay, well, let me try that. So I go to barber school, ended up loving it. And they placed me at a barbershop in Greensboro called Butler's Barbershop.
I know Butlers.
Yes, so everybody knows Butlers, right? So obviously Mr. Butler and Mr. Parker were the guru of barbers.
Yeah.
And so they started the first barbershops here in Greensboro, and then together, and then they branched out and covered the east side and the south side.
Yeah.
So I ended up being placed in Butler's and ended up cutting hair there for the next 17 years.
Wow.
Yes, 17 years. Listen, I will say this, and I'm sure plenty of people will say this. I'm one of the best barbers out here. But that was always something that my father instilled in us as women. Whatever you're going to be the best at it, or one of the best at it. So I always wanted to hone my craft, because I knew I was in a male-dominated field. So let me tell you what else I did, right, to get me by. My memory is like an elephant. So I would go home every night and watch ESPN, right? And I could come back the next day and say everything that the commentators said, right? But I knew how to put that spin on it to act like I knew what I was talking about. So I got labeled as, that girl that cuts hair at Butler's? yeah, she down, right? She knows about sports. Nah, she's not just talking. She really knows the games and blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah. But I'm just regurgitating everything I hear on ESPN. And so it really got me by. It was, I will call it a career that I loved. Absolutely loved it. But over those 17 years, I kept hearing stories from African American men of getting involved in the justice system and they just could never get out.
Okay.
And over 17 years, I'm seeing families being lost, homes being lost, just lives just being turned upside down. So I'm like,
Right.
wait a minute, you went in for a traffic ticket. What's going on here? Or you went in for something petty. What's going on here? And so when it seemed like I'm like, just something's not right. So I'm like, okay, how can I help? So I'm doing this little research. Well, you can help by being a lawyer. And I had some lawyer customers. So they were like, you need to be a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay, well, what does it take to be a lawyer? Well, first I got to go to college. And then I got to take this
And this
test.
is what age? This is what age?
Gosh, I was 29, 30.
Wow.
Yeah, I was 29 or 30. And I'm like, I'm 17 years behind the chair. I'm established.
Yeah.
I'm making great money. I just built a new house. And I'm just like, all right, can I do this as a single parent?
Right. Right.
And I literally, I just went home one night and I prayed about it. Now, the other backstory is I grew up under my mother has always been a preacher. My entire existence, she's been a
Okay.
preacher. So, and she's one of them old school Church of God in Christ preachers. So everything is about prayer. Yeah, everything is about prayer. I don't care what the doctor says. It's pray about it.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, okay, I got to pray about it. And I literally just felt like, listen, if God takes you there, he's going to provide. And so I just said, I'm going to take this LSAT. And if I can get into, I'm going to take this test. If I can get into college, I'm going to college. Well, it worked out well for A&T because I was right here in Greensboro.
Yeah.
So I could just take a lot of night classes. They let me bring my daughter in with me a lot longer. Yeah. That was that. I don't hear of that now, but the professors let me bring my daughter in when I was taking classes at night, got through that.
And you're still cutting all this time. You still.
Oh, yes. I cut even during law school, I cut.
What?
Yes. And I just explained to my clientele that this is what God is calling me to do. And if you just bear with me. And so I switched from doing all walk-ins to doing all appointments.
Okay.
And so going to the appointment, they stuck with me. And then after college, I was like, okay, I want to go to law school and took the LSAT. And here's the deal. So I applied to Duke, Wake Forest, Central, and Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother passed. I graduated in 2002. My grandmother passed. And then the next month, my mother's diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
So I'm like, I got to keep running back and forth to Virginia. That's a 5-hour drive. The only school that I was accepted at that would let me defer for a year was Carolina.
Wow.
And she was like, pay your deposit and we'll put you on a year deferment. So that's how I ended up sticking with Carolina and going to Carolina.
Wow.
And so I drove from Carolina, wasn't supposed to work, wasn't supposed to be driving. You're supposed to stay down there. But I drove because I'm a single mom. And what else? I got to make ends meet. But when I tell you a chick that went back to the basics, I'm talking about the basic car, the basic clothes, the basic oodles and noodles 3-4 times a week, trying to figure out how I'm going to get through college and pay the bills. And, but here's the thing that kept me. My daughter was a teenager. She was in cheerleading and track. So I told her, if you hang with me, I promise I will not miss anything. No matter what I have to do, I won't miss a track meet. I won't miss a game that you're cheering at. And now she stayed up with me. She rode to Carolina sometimes with me, but we made it through.
Wow. Well, my My mind is blown already.
Same.
My mind is blown already. I was single, no kids, going through grad school, and I was fascinated by my classmates who had families doing it, and said, I don't know how in the world you did that and got through it. Now yours is taking it to a whole nother level, even above and beyond that. But we're talking about a real pivotal pivot moment in even just going back for your BS.
Yeah.
And I mean, was there a singular thing, or was just a buildup of the people in the shop? Because you working in the shop, you hear everything
Yes.
that's happening.
It was literally a buildup from the people in the shop, because like I said, I would see families destroyed. And because I mean, I don't know if you guys are married, but what I saw was he gets a traffic ticket. He can't get out of it years later. The money is down the drain in the judicial system. You know, now the money's funny at the house, so everybody's pissed off, right?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And the dynamics just keep going. It's a downhill spiral, and I'm like, I'm seeing men get divorced that in my little 20 minutes every 2 weeks, I'm thinking, well, he's a good guy.
Right.
You
Right.
know, wow.
Yes.
And then once I get into the justice system, I realize that court fines and fees can really take you down.
Yeah.
And it's literally a backward system, because if you don't pay them, then your probation is violated. You get drugged back into court, and every time you make a court appearance, it's another court cost.
Right. Right. Right.
And so I'm like, this is crazy, and this is ridiculous.
I had never heard any of this, Lora, until this past year. And the numbers in Guilford County alone of people who cannot get their license or get their license renewed because of a prior violation that they simply can't take care of, that might have been a $100 fee, and can't get it. And D, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of people
Yes.
who can't get beyond this over a driver's license. And without the license, it's just a trickle down, because then you can't
Yes.
get to work.
Because if you get stopped with driving while license revoked, that's an automatic year revocation again.
And you go to jail.
And yes, and then your car is confiscated, and
Yep.
you can't get to work. So, like Michael said, your job is lost, and then you can't pay the bills, and then the spouse at the house is upset. It was just a no win, and I was like, this cannot be right. Over a 9-mile over speed limit ticket.
Right.
It's crazy.
So Judge, this reminds me of a story. And first of all, I want to say thank you for being one of the ones who are on the side of good and right.
Right.
Many years ago, I was headed into my office on a Saturday. I had to fly out of the country on that Monday, so I had to work on a presentation. I thought I'd go in and just do some work where I had peace and quiet and finish this presentation. Well, I had no reason to rush to get to work. It's on a Saturday. I was speeding. I got pulled over and decided that I was going to go to court and fight this ticket. No other reason, just I wanted to be, the cop, I felt like he wasted some of my time, so I was going to waste some of the court's time. I'm just going to be honest. That's how I looked at it. Well, one of my boys said to me, hey, man, if you go to court and the ADA is a sister, you're in trouble. So this was back in the days where we all had to wear suits to work. So I was suited and booted when I was going to court. Got to court, I see this beautiful young lady. I mean, bad. And I'm like, all right, don't know who she is. I figure she's somebody's a defense attorney or whatever. I walk into court, they call me up, and she walks in and she's the ADA. I'm like, okay, I'm in trouble. All of a sudden, the door comes open and the judge walks out. And guess what? The judge was a sister. So my boy told me, he said, man, if you get a sister ADA, she's going to get you for every brother who's done her wrong. And so that's all I could think in my head. So the judge walks out and they read off my charges. I don't know, I was probably 10, 15 over the speed limit. And they asked me, how do you plead? And I looked at the judge and I looked at the ADA and I'm like, guilty. And the judge, she starts laughing. And she said, Mr. Bryant, if you were just going to plead guilty, why show up to court? And I said, Your Honor, I have to be totally honest. When I got stopped, my mindset was that if the officer was going to waste some of my time, I was going to waste some of the court's time. And I said, but when I saw you and I saw the ADA, I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and plead guilty to this. And she started laughing. And she said, I tell you what, I need you to slow down. We're going to waive the ticket and you need to pay cost of court. And that's all we're going to do today. And wow. I said, you know what? I will slow down and I will never be in your court again.
Right.
So I can appreciate, because again, I had in my mind that these two sisters were going to give me the business for every brother that ever did them wrong. And she let me
But
off.
We're not as bad as you think, right?
Exactly.
Well, I've got to come behind that and just kind of piggyback off of that, because I made assumptions. You and we've encountered each other in professional settings, and I made assumptions about how unapproachable you are because you are Superior Court Judge Lora Cubbage. I literally made assumptions about you until we sat down in that board meeting, cutting up.
DB, listen, you be there because he turns around, right? He's sitting with his back is turned just by way of the way the table is, right? Yeah. So I'm behind him. First of all, he done said something, and I was like, oh, Lord, you about to get somebody fired. And then I just make these little jokes, right? And then suddenly he goes, you know what? You are really down to earth. And I'm sitting here like, okay, what did you expect? Right? And he was like, you're really cool. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of all right. So
let's think about it though.
But you're a professional, and I got to stay here for a second before we get into some court stuff and some election stuff and the whole nine. But there's a lot of talk out there now, and I don't know your status, but there's a lot of talk out there now about what's the term? The high quality men and high quality women.
High value.
High value. There we go. High value women. So you would definitely fall in that high value woman category. So two brothers, we got to ask the question: how do brothers need to step, if she was even available, to judge Superior Court Judge Lora Cubbage?
Well,
what you got to come with?
You just have to be genuine. I mean, at heart, I'm still that country girl from the Shenandoah Valley, right? I took a couple of tests because I wanted to help a couple of people, and it ended up faring well for me as far as that. But I am really just simple, down to earth, Lora, and so simple and so down to earth that once you sit and talk to me like outside of a professional setting, you might even be like, you a judge? Like, for real? Because I'm really just Lora. And so I will say this, though. I do believe that there's some truth in once when you get titles, people do think that you're unapproachable because I've been divorced for 19 years and have had the worst time dating ever. And I'm just like, okay, it can't be this hard. But I had a dentist, one of my dentists who's now deceased. He had told me before, the deeper a woman goes into her professional career, the less likely she is to be married. Now, I'm still talking to God about that because I hope that's not my fate. But
Right.
as of right now, I'm not married. So,
Got it.
and I don't, and I'm not one of those girls that says, "Oh, I got to hurry up and get married," or it is something that I do hope comes along. But I am at a point in my life at 55 where I feel like I don't have to rush to do anything versus getting it right when I do it. And so being single, it has its perks. It has its downfalls like anything else. But hey, I feel like I'm right wherever God wants me to be at the time that He wants me to be. So
Got it.
And
it'll be all right.
I don't know a man who's, especially a black man, who's married to a black woman who's not married to an attorney. All of you guys.
Well, that's either by schooling and title or just because.
It's by nature.
Right.
My wife is an attorney by nature.
Right.
So
that's what I'm saying. So right. So black men, why be scared? You're gonna get
Exactly.
an attorney either way.
I would agree.
Go get an attorney either way. We're gonna grill you at some point.
Yes.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. So I have to ask the question to pivoting a bit here. Superior Court judge, what's the difference? I've heard circuit court, I've heard judicial court, superior court, Supreme Court. I've got a pretty good idea about, but what's the distinguishing factor? And am I right with superior, circuit, and judicial?
You are for different states. So I know,
Okay.
like in my home state of Virginia, their hierarchy is district, then circuit, or circuit, then district. I can't remember. Then you got your appellate courts. In North Carolina, the hierarchy is you have your administrative judges, then you'll have your district court judge, and then your superior court judge, and then your appellate courts. And so it's just what the breakdown of it is, what each level can handle. So if you're an administrative law judge, you can only handle that portion of the law which you govern, right? So like administrative law judge, you might go to the industrial commission. Those commissioners are also SWATO judges, but the only thing they can handle is like workers' compensation claims, right?
Got it.
Your district court judges are the low-lying, what they call trial court judges, which is where if someone comes in and pleads not guilty, they have a constitutional right to a trial. That is going to be a bench trial, but those judges can only handle misdemeanors and like family law and juvenile law. When you get to the superior court level, we are what you call in North Carolina the highest trial court. And so it's what we have the ability to do. A district court judge, you may get 30 days in jail, right? You may lose if it's a civil case, you're going to lose less than $25,000 at any given point in time. Superior court judges, we have the ability to incarcerate you for the rest of your life. Or on the civil side, we have the ability to bankrupt you. So it's just what the limits that the law allows. And so when you're talking about someone pleading guilty in criminal or not guilty, or in civil saying I did or I didn't do it, in layman's terms, the buck stops at my level.
Okay.
The only thing you can do for my level is appeal it. And when you go to the appellate courts, the facts of the case are not heard. What you're telling the Court of Appeals is, I think Judge Cubbage did something wrong.
Right.
It's never about the facts. The facts stop with me.
Got it.
So on the civil side, you have the ability to grant punitive and compensatory damages versus.
Yes.
I got you. Okay.
Yes. So civil, we're never talking about loss of liberty. We're always talking about money. Criminal, we're very rarely talking about money unless it's restitution or court costs or fine, but we're always talking about loss of liberty.
Now, the Superior Court judge is an appointed position, correct?
No, it's elected.
Elected. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So in North Carolina, all of your judicial positions are elected. The only time that you get appointed, like when Chill read that I got appointed, if a judge steps down before their term is up, then the governor has the ability to appoint someone to fill that term.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And is there a time limit on it, or a term?
Yes. Yes. So like my term is 8 years.
Okay.
And so I got elected, I got appointed in 18, but I also got elected in 18. So my term is up in 2026. If I should step down today, the governor has the ability to appoint someone to fill my term, but they must run in 2026 in order to do another 8 years.
So you were appointed in 18, and in that same year you had to run
to keep
for
the seat.
again.
Yes. So if you're ever appointed 60 days outside of the next general election, you must run in that election to keep the position.
So, which is really interesting because if I'm not mistaken, in 2018 was the first time, at least in the state of North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, that you had to say I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. Because
2016.
2016. Okay. Prior to that,
Yeah.
it was nonpartisan.
Right.
So my question is then, if and I know your job is to oversee the law. You don't make laws or anything. Just make sure laws are followed properly. But could one say that, all right, this judge, I know he or she ran as a Republican. Now I have to set foot in this judge's courtroom knowing that he or she ran as a Republican. I am a staunch Democrat, whatever. To me, there's something wrong with that. And maybe it's just me, that I know this person ran under a certain ticket. And so there's certain beliefs that this person has, even though they're supposed to uphold the law, and that's the only thing they're supposed to really do.
That is absolutely how every citizen that comes before us thinks. And we cannot get the legislature to see that. If you talk to every single judge, 90% of us think that was the worst thing in the world, because no one should, there's an anxiety anyway. And that is why the trust is so low between the public and the judiciary or the judicial system as a whole, because never should anyone think that the outcome of their case is going to be something that depends on their party affiliation or my party affiliation. Right. And now when you're choosing judges, when you're out here talking about judges, you don't know whether we're running to be a neutral, unbiased party, or, like now, if you look at these commercials, the judges are telling you how they're going to rule on a topic.
Yeah.
But how do you rule on something before you hear the facts of the case? Right. It is the worst thing. Most of us think that it is something that should not have happened, but because we don't make the law, the legislature put that law in place. It did not have the ability to be vetoed by the governor, and so here we are.
Wow.
Hey guys, this is DB with the Silver Man Podcast. Hey, we really appreciate you guys rocking with us all these months. The feedback has been amazing. We hope to continue to bring you amazing content. We need a huge favor from you though. We need you to like. I think that like button is somewhere right here. We need you to share. I think it's right here maybe. And we need you to subscribe. Come on guys, keep rocking with us and share this content. And we want to reach millions. We appreciate you.
Wow.
Yeah, and you will see in, I'll just use myself. I ran statewide for Court of Appeals in 2020 and Supreme Court this year, 2024. Right. Yeah. I lost that race in the primary, but it is very hard in the state of North Carolina for a Democratic candidate to win on a statewide level, because North Carolina numbers as a whole, as a state, lean Republican.
Yep.
But again, for the judiciary, it should not matter. We're not here to play party politics.
Yeah.
So, and most of us judges do not feel like we're politicians.
Right.
you know, but
Right.
we're kind of thrown in there, and we have to try to find our way to be a politician, to try to, you know, and then we're always trying to figure out what to say, how to answer questions. Most questions we can't answer by law.
Got it. Got it.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
In your general cases, and is this a muscle that had to be developed? How you maintain impartiality when you hear your various cases? How is that something that you build over time? Are you trained in that as you're going through law school to think that way?
You're definitely not trained in that in law school, but you do get that training. But I will tell you this: what I think helped me, you never know how your background's gonna come out down the road, right? But
Right.
I think growing up in a town where we were the only Black kids, and then coming to a town like Greensboro where there's 60-40, and that leans minority,
Yeah.
especially within the city limits, you start to realize that we really are the same. You know, we have different skin tones, but we have so many similarities, and there's so many things that we share. So we have more similarities than we have differences. But then you put that to the side, because for me, I know how I want to be treated, and I know that I don't want anyone to prejudge me by the color of my skin, or, you know, whatever. And so you just learn how not to do that. Now, I will tell you this, that you grow up with certain beliefs and concepts, and there's always going to be somebody that comes in there that's totally opposite. And you really have to fight to put those, you know, biases down and say, you know, I have to put what I grew up believing and thinking, you know, down,
Right.
and realize everybody has a right to do or think or behave however. But if it's when it steps outside of the bounds of the law, then that's when I have to deal with it.
With something as serious as a criminal case, and I'll just say violent criminal case, how do you leave the bench in the afternoon and separate that out from life outside of the courtroom?
Then that gets hard. But for me, I think it's knowing that whatever I did on that day, I did the very best that I could. And I always have to strike a balance of protecting somebody's constitutional rights with protecting the community, right? Um, and lawyers start to learn their judges and what are pet peeves. Now, for me, everybody knows, for me, a violent assault is a pet peeve. A sexual assault is a pet peeve, and especially against a child. Um, you know, so at the end of the day, if I've incarcerated someone for the rest of their life for a sexual assault that they've pled to or been convicted of against a child, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with that. The biggest hard times for me is having to incarcerate, which to us are still called kids, even though they think that they're adults,
Yep.
right? And then having to take away most of their young adult life, and knowing that by the time they see the light of day, they're going to be my age with no skill set. The world has went on, no marketable skills.
Yeah.
They've taken away a lot of vocational training that you used to could get in prison. And then, you know, you can almost see that once they get out 20, 30 years from now, I mean, what do they have other
Right.
than recidivism?
Yeah. Is there any truth to the judicial system just encountering or seeing more young Black men than other demographics?
Oh, absolutely. There's truth to it. But there's a lot of factors that go into that, right? So what we do know by studies is that African American males do not commit crimes at any higher rate than any other demographic. We know that. That's a given. But what we also know is it's all about economics, right? So Most of the time when you see the courtroom full of people that look like you, it's because we don't have the money to employ the lawyer to come in that has a relationship with the DA and, can kind of, that knows how to navigate the system. I'm not going to say finagle or do anything shady, but, they have a relationship with the DA and they know who to ask for what, because they peace. And I'm also going to say, most people think that public defenders are like, oh God, I got a public defender. But I always tell people, and I say this, public defenders work much, much harder than we give them credit because they're getting paid the same at the end of the day, right? There's no case that means any more to them than any other case, but for the fact that maybe they've gotten a little bit emotionally connected to the client or the case. That paid attorney, retained attorney, they care as much as you pay. If you pay me all my money, I care all a lot. If you don't pay me all my money, I don't care as much, right? And so it's a misnomer to say that if you got a public defender, you're not going to get good representation, because that's just not the truth. The truth of the matter is that money gets you in quicker, money gets you to, to the top tier people, and there's tiers of everyone. But it's disheartening to walk into a courtroom and the whole courtroom looks like me. What's even worse is I have limits because I live under what we call judicial canons, right? Those are the laws that govern judges. So it's so much I cannot say, right? But what I can say, I try to say, and this is, I'm just going to be transparent about the way I feel. I'm sitting up there and I'm like, my people don't believe me. When I'm sitting here and I'm trying to talk to you, you don't believe me. And I see me as that simple girl that grew up in the country, didn't have running water till I was in the 5th grade, didn't have an indoor bathroom till I was in the 5th grade. And you're looking at me like I was born with a silver spoon. No, but for the grace of God, I'm in the same position that you're in. So I'm telling you how not to be in this position. I'm doing things to try to set you up for success, and you're bucking me at every turn. And I can't just sit out and say, I'm trying to help you without losing my license here. And I have so many young people that will go against what I'm trying to do because they just don't have that overall trust for the justice system, period.
So, D, either me or you got to go there. One of the two of us got to go there at this point. I didn't know whether we were still talking to Lora or Kamala. There's so many similarities.
Yes, there are.
In what you just described. And that's one of the things that Dee and I had talked about. We had to go there with you over the course of the past month, 2 months, 3 months. Kind of the Kamala effect backlash that we're seeing with Black men as we come up on this, and we're on top of the presidential election. What's your take on it? Or you may have just described it.
She got a bad rap. Because I don't know the laws of California, but I can tell you here, I have this book. Think of it as the same box that you see us three in, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go over when you plead guilty or a jury convicts you of a crime, I'm going to look at your record level. The level is determined by how many prior crimes you've committed. You get points for each crime. Let's say if you're record level 3, I'm going over to record level 3. Then I'm going down on the side to whatever class the current crime is that you're pleading guilty to, and I'm making them meet. And when I make them meet, I have got to sentence you in that range.
Got it.
I don't have a choice.
Yep.
They have what they call a mitigated range, and they have a presumptive range, which is in the middle, and they have an aggravated range. if your attorney does not argue mitigating factors, I cannot go down in that mitigated range, no matter how much I want to.
Mm-hmm.
If the DA does not argue aggravating factors, I can't go up in that top range, no matter how much I want to, because at this point, I'm neither the defense attorney nor the prosecutor. It's
Yep.
not my case.
Right.
It's not my case to try. It's not my case to defend.
Right.
I'm here as a referee. And when you plead guilty, I've got to make those numbers meet.
Wow.
Well, and here's my thing, as it relates to Black men and Kamala. I don't have that problem because I've never broken the law to that degree, and it's by choice. So some of these are decisions that you have made, and when I say you, meaning the general population, general public.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose not to break the law, then it doesn't apply to you. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to be pissed off because some brother got locked up for something for doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to be mad about it. I didn't grow up rich. I did some things in my younger years, that probably could have landed me in jail, from marijuana smoke, it wasn't legal. Again, and probably had at least a misdemeanor amount on me at any given time when I was in college. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's where they talk about institutional racism, right? That I'll be honest, I don't buy into 100% because my story is your story, DB, right? Likely Michael's Chill's story as well. But what we do see in the court system is legacy, right? Johnny is the offspring of Johnny Sr. This is now Johnny the Fourth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is something to be said that you only know what you know.
Yeah.
And then by the time you learn something different, you're so indoctrinated with what you knew that it's hard to change, right? And so we don't see in the big picture, we don't see a lot of new offenders. We see families, generations. And it's so repetitive that we know them by name, right? It's so repetitive and the genes are so strong, even the physical genes are so strong that when you come in, I knew whose son you was because you look just like him.
Wow.
Right. And so, but then the argument with the institutional racism is, are these barriers put in place from generation to generation to generation where no one can overcome them? But then you've got my story and your story, and you're like, no, I know people can overcome them because I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did. You just have to have a change of your mind.
But even in your story, you still had to change your environment, which was part of the kickoff. And some of these folks never escape the environment.
Exactly.
So you see the generational curses.
Yes.
Continue, and literally just wonder how, this kid that was just born and he's still right here in the projects.
Yeah.
Will he or she ever get out of this?
No, and they don't want to, because that is what is normal to them, right? Even if I look at myself and I say I'm successful, right? What am I measuring that up against? If I'm measuring that up against the family or the people that I grew up with, then I am. But if I measure that up against other folks, maybe not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so they don't know how. The eye-opening moment for me in this whole thing was I had a gentleman that stood before me and said, Judge, I'm just going to be honest. As long as there's a shelter that is feeding me, I'm good. But guess what? The shelters kick you out at 7 or 8 in the morning. You cannot go back in no matter how hot it is or how cold it is until 7 or 8 at night. So jail is my safe place.
Wow.
and he says, I don't want to be locked up, but I get 3 meals a day. I know where I'm gonna lay my head. I know the heat is coming on. I know the air conditioning's coming on, and I don't have a thing to worry about. I'm going to keep reoffending. There's no need for you to give me this speech.
Wow.
Because and so I literally stopped talking. If you're not between a young child and 30,
Yeah.
I'm just putting in my ruling and done.
Got
But if you're somewhere between, I've incarcerated someone as young as 6 for shooting his sister. But yes, for shooting his sister to 30, then that's when I'll still have a conversation and say, listen, I'm gonna talk to you like we're sitting at the kitchen table because I want you to understand how real this is. And I told them, and I will tell them, don't even take from me like I'm trying to eradicate crime. If that happens, I sit up, I don't have a job. So I'm not trying to do that. But I'm trying to show you how to get in and get out the system. No need for you to marry us. But if you listen, wherever you tell me you want your address to be is where I'm gonna help you be.
Wow.
And if you want your address to be somewhere in Raleigh or Sycamore Street, I assure you we got a bed for you.
Wow.
But if I put you on this plan and I'm setting you up for success and you want to be successful, if you try, I'll try. But if you don't try.
So Judge, how do you, after seeing all of this day in and day out, how do you take care of your mental health?
I just started learning to do that, right? So I do, I sit in meetings when I get a chance to laugh, and I laugh like I did with Jill that day. I try to surround myself with people that are full of life. I have now started getting massages, believe it or not. And then I don't take the world on my shoulder anymore. You know what? If I can help one, I'm good. And as many as I can, I'm good. But I used to have this, I need to save the world. Some people think they're already saved. And then for the ones that don't, I'm still going to be me. And I just have a heart to serve and a heart to help. But I'm not going to beat myself up if I see that person come back and come back and come back. And I really used to be hard on people for not having the mind to change until, these last 20 years, I've started seeing, this is legacy. This is legacy.
Yeah.
This is what they know.
Right. Well, we're I can't believe it, but we're coming up on the end of our 60 minutes. And as I mentioned, we are right on top. We say it every 4 years. We're right on top of the most important election of our lives. And a lot of folks have made comments in the press recently about their vote not being important, their vote not having any value, not carrying any weight. Nothing's going to change. All of these comments. So I want to give you the last word in regards to your take on those comments and what you would say to an individual who says, my vote doesn't mean anything. I'm going to sit this one out.
I would say what I say in every election. Your vote is your voice. It's not the only thing that you can do to give, right, to society and how it's shaped, but it's absolutely an important thing. And I know, Chill, like you said, we say it all the time. This is the most consequential election of our life. But this really is the most consequential election of your life. And regardless of who you want, whether you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat, whether you want to see Harris as your president or you want to see Trump as your president, because these candidates are so on opposite ends of the spectrum, it is very important to you that your candidate gets in, because if you're Trump and it ends up Kamala, it's going to change everything for you. And if you're Kamala and you end up with Trump, it's going to change everything for you. And more importantly, more or just as important as a presidential election is your local elections.
Yes.
And I tell this to people all the time. Your city council, if you live within the city limits of any town, your city council is who makes up those rules. It's not your president. It's not your governor. It's your city council, right? If you are outside of that, of the city limits, then you're talking about the state legislature. If you want to know if you're in the city limits, why your minimum wage has not been raised, that's your mayor and their council, right? If you want to know on a statewide basis, that's your House of Representatives and your senators. If you don't know who your senator is, who your House of Representative is, or what their obligations and duties are, then sit down for 5 minutes and look it up. Look at your voter registration card and see who that is. Because I can tell you from me as an elected official, I don't care what you come before me on. I'm going to change your life that day. That day. Not tomorrow, not next week. If you come before me today, I'm changing your life today. Whether that's a continuance of your case or whether that's an adjudication of your case. If I continue your case for you, you get another day to go to the job. If you're in criminal court, right? You got another day to be with your family. If I don't continue your case, I might take your liberty away from you. I don't know anybody, including myself. I can't do 3 days in jail and my life is the same.
Yeah.
I can't do 1 day. If I do 1 day in jail, my whole career is gone.
Right.
That means life the way I know it is gone, completely gone. And so if you are that person that it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter. But if you're somebody like me and most people I know, get to the polls and don't stop at the president's race. Vote that whole ballot front and back because your life literally does depend on it.
That's good. I told you she was dope, D.
DB's like, oh God, that's deep. She went deep.
No, we need that. When
Yes,
this airs,
we
we will be literally a day out
We do.
from this election. So I don't want to hear people complain about what they didn't vote for.
Yeah.
I say it all the time. If you don't vote, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Simple as that. You're part of the problem. And I'm not a garbage can, so you can't come to me and dump all your stuff in me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that your candidate's going to win, but at least you tried.
Yeah.
At least you tried. So, but I have faith that no matter how this goes, we've seen it through this far, and we're gonna find a way to be okay.
That's a good last word. We're gonna find a way to be okay.
Or we moving.
Well, the one thing we do know is, regardless who's president, governor, or whatever, there's one who sits high on the throne that has the final say of all of this.
That's exactly right.
That's where I put my beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, DB, 150%.
Real good. 150%. Well, this has been a pleasure. She has the title of Superior Court Judge Lora Cubbage. We call her Lora, and now you all know why. We're not done with you. We're done tonight because we're out of time, but we're not done with you. You got layers, and we got to get into some more of these layers. But this has been a pleasure.
And listen, here's the thing: once this election is over, the big question, what's next?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because everybody says make a plan this election, but what's the plan after this election? Regardless of how this goes, we need to make a plan. What's next?
We're gonna bring you back to talk about that one because DB is one who's who talks about the plan or lack thereof. I love the caucuses when it's more than a party.
Right.
And I'm not talking about a political party.
I know.
So
if they have to fly in entertainment, you know something right is not going on.
Listen.
I'm just being honest.
No, completely honest. I was just talking about I was just, when did our entertainers become political action figures?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when you absolutely know that something's not right.
Right.
And listen, I'm one of the biggest fans, but when our political election hinges on the lyrics of Eminem, we got some problems.
Yep.
But in the defense, that should not be what gets us motivated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But it just shows that the tactics that has to be used to get us to care about our future. And even for us our age, if we feel like, you know what, we might be okay. But we got kids and I've got a granddaughter, that I can't. When I tell you my spirit gets grieved, I cannot leave here and not know that she's going to be okay.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got to know that she's going to be okay. And if nothing drives me to the poll to vote, I got a 7-year-old that's counting on me. That's counting on me because she cannot fend for herself. I got to go to the polls.
Right.
I got to go to the polls.
I'm with you. I have 3 daughters and a granddaughter.
Yeah.
And their rights are up for grabs. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Literally up for grabs.
Literally.
Yeah.
And it's.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard a gentleman the other day says, encourage you to vote. We want you to vote. But regardless of whether you do or don't, on Tuesday the 5th, there will be a president elected. There will be somebody that takes the helm of this country. Are either one of the two in a position to correct all of the ills that this world has in its view and in its path? And the answer to that is no. But of the 2 choices that you have at that level, who is going to be the one that's more concerned with protecting you all's grandbabies, children, and grandbabies, and my children and future grandchildren? Who is going to be more concerned about that than themselves? And we encourage you, from the Soul of a Man podcast, from Lora, Superior Court Judge Lora Cubbage, from myself, Chill, and DB, please go out and utilize your right that people died for and fought for and paid taxes for. Had to make a decision between taking care of the family and feeding the family and paying a tax in order to vote. And we're not talking about 100 years ago.
Right.
We're not talking that far back. I'll be 60 in January. We talking right around the time that I came into this world.
Yes.
Folks, still had limited rights in that regard. So we encourage you to go out and cast your vote, utilize your right and cast your vote. And Lora, we're gonna have you back because this has been good, and it started cooking. I can't imagine what your students over at A&T get on any given night that you're teaching them. But we look forward to it. We look forward to building a relationship. You're a part of the Soul of a Man podcast family at this point, and we look forward to getting to know even more about you. So we will see you all soon. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure that you check this out on Monday, November 4th at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel of the same name, the Soul of a Man podcast. Peace.
and vote.
Yes.